What's up? This is the Ike's Inspirations podcast, everybody. And today I have a great friend and the new guest. His name is Tim, and Tim is a real estate investor, and he has a lot of tips and strategies on how to go about purchasing real estate. So I'm really excited to have Tim on this podcast. Tim, can you do us a favor and introduce us to our audience?
Yeah, man. Hey, dude, Ike, I appreciate you getting me on the show here. Loved the connection we had last week on the phone. For everybody out there listening, my name is Tim. Tim U for short, right? So I got a 5-letter name. I'm 31 years old, active duty Army officer, out in Louisville, Kentucky. And in the last year in real estate, I've probably done over 15, 16 deals in the last year. And this kind of like my new passion is what I'm kind of focused on now. So I'm excited to kind of chat and learn about everybody. So thank you.
So, dude, no, you're welcome. And thank you for coming on. So first of all, you talk about, you started from the military. Yeah. Let's like kind of talk from your journey, where you started from and how you got to where you are today. So, you started from the military. What made you transition from the military to real estate? How did you decide to start making real estate transactions after being in the military?
Man, that's a good question, bro. I get asked this question a lot of how I got started in real estate. And I think really when I moved to Kentucky, not everyone has the luxury of having an affordable market. So Kentucky, I'm from New York originally. So obviously like houses there are triple, quadruple the prices here. And, I used to commute 45 minutes to work every day. So I used to drive to Fort Knox every day. And I lived in a downtown apartment, 600 square feet, paying $1,400 a month in rent. And I kind of like got fed up, right? I was like, I need to move out of here. I had noisy neighbors and all that stuff. Went downstairs to the leasing office and asked the lady, when do I need to tell you when I'm going to move out? And she's like, well, why are you moving out? And I'm like, well, I want to buy a house. I don't want to like rent this apartment anymore and all this stuff. And literally an agent walked around the corner and was like, I'm a real estate agent. You want to work together and try to find a house? And I'm like, why not? Let's roll with it. So bought my first property in February 2022. And when we closed escrow and I bought that house, I kind of had like this feeling. I'm like, wow, that was actually really addicting or really fun in a way. And I asked her, cause she was an investor herself. She has like Airbnbs and all that. And I said, how do you get started in real estate investing? I watch videos on YouTube. I see all these Instagram folks. How do I get started? And she said, well, you can listen to podcasts. You can read some books. And she led me to The Bigger Pockets. And then we go back to me commuting to work every day. I used to listen to The Bigger Pockets every single day for at least an hour a day while I was driving. So I probably listened to, tons and tons of episodes. And then it got to like November 2022. I actually decided to be like, you know what? I think I'm going to go try to buy a house and try to flip it. So that's kind of how I got started. Like I just listened to a ton of podcasts and education. And I got to the point where I need to take some action, right? So found a deal on Zillow that went from $100,000 to $50,000 overnight. And I called that same agent that I worked with a year ago. And I said, hey, do you want to go see it? And that's kind of how it got started, man.
Wow, man. And so, you mentioned that when you did your first transaction that it felt a little like addicting. Like what about that first transaction where you're like, man, I gotta keep doing this? Like, can you talk towards that feeling of like, I don't want to say addiction, but that feeling that made you want to just keep doing it again and again? Yeah.
I think like people have you heard of retail therapy?
No, I have not. What is it? So
like when people like feel sad and they go buy like a purse or they go buy like an expensive watch or something, and you get that like fuzzy feeling like, wow, that this item like made me feel good. The thing is like for me, I thought about the 29 years of my life that I lived paying rent, right? Like, how much money did I spend on rent that was going to someone else's pocket? I bought the house, I do have a mortgage on the primary residence I live in, but every payment I make is I'm paying back myself or paying the bank, and I'm making equity, making money on it. The appreciation, all this stuff. And I think that feeling of buying that property and realizing that it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was, right? Like, you're like, man, like, how do I go buy a $300,000-$400,000 house? And then when you go through the process for the first time, you realize that it's not as crazy as it seems. Now, on the investing side, we'll get to that, but there's a lot of intricacies and complications on that end. But when you're just buying a house, and the numbers make sense for you, it's really not that hard, right? You bring the money for the down payment, you get a bank loan, and you just go through the process, right? So I think that's kind of what happened to me. Like, I saw how easy it was. I saw that I wasn't paying any more rent. And then I started looking into it more and more, and I started to realize, well, real estate is the most common vehicle to get to financial freedom, right? I think someone told me a long time ago, if you want to be a millionaire, you buy real estate.
For sure. Yeah. Real estate, like, for people who don't know, this is a statistical fact. It is the number one most common vehicle that made millionaires in America. So that's a fact. Like, that the percent of people who are millionaires in America, it is real estate. That's the highest percentage of folks. And so, yeah, man, I love what you said about real estate. It's one of the reasons why I got into it. And some people don't look at real estate like this, but it literally forces you to save. Every time you're paying a mortgage, you're like, it's kind of, you're forced to pay like a monthly saving account, but and like, so I like how, like, the discipline aspect of it kind of allows you to save, because what you're really doing is just building equity. So, because we want to learn a lot more about your story, because I think what you did is fascinating. You talked about how in November, I think of November of 2022, you started real estate. And then from there, you've had over like 15 to 20 transactions from your real estate journey. And that was in like a span of a year and a half. How are you able to just get so many transactions done, Tim, in a short span of time? I think that's just crazy, because I know how, I would think it requires a lot of capital and time and knowledge. And, I'm really curious to learn how you did that.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right? It takes capital in a way. You need money to buy houses, but people think that you need your own money to do it. I'll get to that in a little bit, right? But you need education, you need money, you need a network. But I think the network is probably the most important thing. And a lot of people don't realize that when I tell the story of how I did this, was the first 6 months after I bought that house, I did not do anything. Right. So really, I did a bulk of my stuff in the last 8-9 months. The first 6 months, how I got into the first deal was I used a hard money loan. So for people that don't know what a hard money loan is, it is from a financial institution or a company that lends money to real estate investors to buy homes cash and to renovate the property. So for all you real estate junkies out there, if you're doing a fix and flip, or the famous BRRRR method, right? So you would use a hard money loan to buy a house cash, and then you renovate, and then you can either rent it out as a long-term rental, or you can sell it on the market for a profit. So I used a hard money loan, did all that stuff, and that was how I funded my first deal. Now, obviously, when you're a beginner investor, those hard money lenders don't give you that full 100% purchase price. So you need to bring your own capital. So what I did was I asked my parents for a loan, and they said no. They did not believe in investing. They did not believe in taking the risks and all that stuff. So I told them, well, and this is, by the way, disclaimer, I don't recommend anyone doing what I did, but I withdrew my retirement accounts to pull all the money out, and I used that money to cover the difference. And that's how I bought that first flip. We renovated the property. We flipped it. We sold it. It went horrible. If you want to talk about it later, we can.
No, we can talk about it now.
Yeah. So, I mean,
What about that transaction went so horrible?
Yeah, dude. I mean, so the biggest thing is, I think people think that real estate is very easy, or how people online portray it, that it's very easy to do. Now, I did not have the right network, didn't have the right contractors. The biggest lesson point that I would probably tell people when you're flipping houses or renovating in general is don't pick the cheapest contractor. I picked the cheapest contractor thinking I can maximize the spread of the deal, and it ended up being a really bad renovation. All the horror stories that you can name, like the contractor disappearing on us on the last half. You know, me and my wife were literally painting the house ourselves, trying to get it done. Right? I think in 6 months of me trying to flip that property, I think I made like $3,000 or $4,000, maybe $5,000. So in 6 months' time, I didn't make any money. But the experience I gained from just trying made my life way easier in the long run, right? So now I've done maybe 6 or 7 renovations. I've done 3 or 4 flips now. So you get better every single time. And even the deal that I just did recently, this flip I just listed on the market, I learned something new this time. So if you're going to flip it for a flip to a residential buyer, hire a designer up front. Pay the $1,000 up front to get a professional designer to lay out the property, and then you can renovate it the right way the first time, right? Instead of going backwards and adding stuff on the end and paying more money.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of it's very interesting to me that despite all the struggles you had and the little amount of money you made, and the fact that it took you 6 months to make $5,000, you still decided to pursue real estate. I think it says a lot about you and your character. I feel like a lot of people probably would have been like, "Oh man, fuck this," or like, "This isn't worth it." But you really said, "Yo, I'm gonna stick through it," and it's interesting to see how you reap the rewards from your experience. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about, Tim, was why what keeps you so persistent and consistent with these deals? What makes you want to just keep going and going and going, and what's your long-term vision with real estate?
Yeah, those are good questions. I think I'm going to ask or answer the first part of how do I stay consistent. I think it's kind of like how I felt when I bought my first house. It's like my training wheels came off, right? Even though I didn't do a good job on my first project and I made like a little bit of money, I think that me going through the process, I understand the idea of it. Right? Like now I'm like, oh, okay, like this is how you do a flip. And this is, now I have a list of things that I don't want to do next time. And it's kind of like when people talk about older people say like, oh, I wish I had this knowledge and I went back in time and redid it all. Well, I did my first flip and now let's go do another one and do a better job and make some more money on it. Right. So I think it's like, as you do certain things, you get better at certain things and you feel like you can do it again. I also feel like it's something, intrinsic for like my background, right? So I'm a military guy, and I talked about it on another segment with a buddy I had, was saying, as soldiers in the military, we deploy, we train, and we do all these things to serve the country, but you never really think about how can I serve myself and how can I serve my family, and the people around me. And for me, real estate is the vehicle that will generate a good income, will set myself up for retirement to be able to support the things that my family wants to do and to affect change. So now, I teach veterans on how to invest in real estate to do the same thing I do. Right. And I think that kind of bleeds into like my long-term stuff is obviously, investing and doing real estate is good financially. But also now with this knowledge, I can help other veterans do the same. I've seen so many veterans out there that work 20, 30 years to retirement, and their retirement isn't enough to survive. So they end up getting another job. Like, no, let's get you started in investing. Let's teach you some skills to make you that financial freedom money that you're looking for, to get you that financial stability, right? And to get you to that quality of life that you want to achieve.
Oh, wow. So that's interesting. So you're very interested in targeting people who were in the military and teaching them how to do real estate, because that's something that you went through. And I think that's really interesting, because I've heard a lot of stories of people who went to the military And although it's like what you said, I feel like the military prepares you to serve your country, but it doesn't seem like it does a great job of preparing you to serve yourself or leaving you with the skills and knowledge to kind of to succeed outside of the military, right? Has that been your experience personally?
I mean, I think it's different for everybody. But in terms of like financial education, I think there's a lack of exposure. There's a lack of education. Like, I think I talked to somebody yesterday. I thought it was 23%, but he says it's even less. So he says that 16% of eligible veterans use their VA loan.
Wow.
Right? And if you don't know what the VA loan is, it's the ability to buy a house 0% down.
Wow. That's crazy. Yo, we got to talk about that. Is mind blowing, bro. I'm not even a part of the military, but I always wish I was there temporarily just so I can use the VA loan. So for those of the people who they're hearing the VA loan, they may not know what that is. Can you explain what is a VA loan, and what has your experience with it been like?
Yeah, I think the VA loan is probably one of the best. It actually is the best loan product that a bank can give, right, for housing. So like I said before, like it's 0%. You can buy a house with 0% down payment. That's alone insane, right? So if you buy a house for $300,000, you buy 0% down in 30 years, it appreciates to $1 million. You made $700,000 with zero money out of your pocket, right? The second
is there a limit to the capital? Can you buy like a $1 million property for 0% down?
Yeah, you can. So I think the cap is like in the 900s right now.
Oh, okay.
I may be mistaken, but it's pretty high, and we get like entitlement and stuff like that depending on where you live. That cap extends or decreases depending on where you live. Because obviously, if I lived in Washington D.C., I can buy a house for $300,000.
Yeah,
right?
obviously.
Right. So it kind of adjusts. But the biggest thing is, like, for all you guys out there, when you guys do anything less than 20% down, you have to pay mortgage insurance, right? So that extra $100, $200 a month. With the VA loan, you don't pay PMI, right? Wow. So you, like, not only are you zero down, you're also making $0 payments to the PMI. So it's just strictly a mortgage payment.
Oh wow, that's so interesting, man. And so is the VA loan a loan that you can use repeatedly and consistently, or is it a one-time thing?
It really depends on your entitlement, right? So we have a set amount of entitlement. So, I'm not a loan officer and I don't know the intricacies of it, but I can give you the basics of it. Okay. So you're supposed to live there for at least a year because it has to be your primary residence. Gotcha. So let's say I buy a house for $200,000. I live there for a year, and then I move and I go buy another house that is under my entitlement level. So let's say I buy another $200,000 house, I can do so. If you are over your entitlement, you have to pay a certain fee depending on how much entitlement you go over. So if you're going over $100,000, you have to pay a percentage of that difference to get into that house. You can also obviously refinance your loans. So let's say I have 20% equity 10 years from now. Why don't I go to a bank and refinance that loan into a conventional, and then I get my VA entitlements back? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's a way to kind of get around it. Personal experience of mine was I bought a duplex. So I bought a duplex 0% down. I negotiated seller's concessions, so the seller gave me $5,000 for closing, and I ended up getting paid $200 at the closing table to buy that house. So imagine going to the closing table and the title company writes you a check for $200 to buy a house, right? So that was my experience. I lived in the 1-1, so I had a 1-bedroom apartment and a 2-bedroom apartment next door. I lived in the 1-bedroom and I renovated the 2-bedroom, and I made that into a furnished finder's rental for midterm. So I charged maybe $2,000, $2,100 a month on that furnished side, and I lived in the 1 unit for X amount of time until I got married. So I lived there basically almost for free. I paid like a couple $100 a month to live there. And then when we got married, we moved to a different house, and now I rent that out. So now I'm cash flowing $600-$700 a month for $0 out of my pocket.
Wow.
Right. So when you think about like cash on cash return, it's like an unlimited cash on cash return because I put no money into it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Wow. Shout out to the military, man. Hopefully this knowledge can get out to more people because a lot of people need to hear about this, especially if you're in the military. That's insane, man. So I'm curious to learn more about you, Tim, and like your real estate journey and just your overall life experiences. Like, what would you personally say is the most difficult thing you've been through in your life, and how did you overcome that?
Man, I don't know, man. I mean, that's a loaded question, bro.
Yeah.
But I mean, dude, like I've been moving around a lot, like every couple of years, just because of my job. But I think, my parents are first time immigrants, so they moved here from China, man, 30, 40 years ago.
Okay.
I was the first American born in my family.
Hmm.
So really interesting. I was actually like I was actually the first one to go to college too.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So kind of crazy, but my parents are military, or my dad was. So
Wow.
that's kind of how I had the background. But I think the biggest challenge I have is probably lack of exposure
Okay.
to stuff like that, right? So like anything with investing or money making or business, whatever, it's kind of all about being exposed to it, right?
Mm.
And being able to be around the people doing the things that you want to do.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I think for me, I took a chance in this real estate thing just because I've been like watching stuff online, but really though I've really grown because of the people that I surround myself with now on a
Mm.
daily basis, right?
Mm.
And I'm not telling people to like stop being friends with people that they've been friends with forever. It's just,
Yeah,
you look around the room and you really start to think about it, right? When you start thinking about the way, well, once you start getting into business, you start thinking about stuff like this.
for sure.
When you look around the room with your five closest friends, you all probably make the same amount of money,
Yeah.
like on average, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Because some of
For
us,
sure.
we meet at work, we do this, we have the same hobbies, whatever.
Yeah.
You all make the same amount of money at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and we're not saying like, value people by the amount of money they make. It's just if you want to learn how to make $300,000 a year and you're making $50,000 a year, the people around you don't know how to do that,
Yeah.
right? So you go talk to someone that makes that much money and they give you the ideas, they give you the exposure, and makes you think differently,
Yeah. No,
right? So
yeah.
that's pretty much it.
No, I completely agree with you. Not only that, I feel like people who are probably making a lot more money, or probably have some more success, they normalize a lot of behaviors that just being around them, you will start to do as a result, just simply being around them, compared to some of your friends who may not be as driven or as ambitious. You know what I'm saying? And so one of the things I'm very curious to learn about, Tim, is, your parents are an immigrant, you're Chinese. It doesn't sound like you came up with a network of people who were able to, originally help you with your real estate, because you said you started at 29. So how did you surround yourself around those people that were able to build you up and make you better at real estate? And can you give us some examples?
Yeah, so I just want to be transparent. So my sister, she married my brother-in-law,
Sure.
and he is very savvy with investing. In terms of, he's not he has a couple of real estate properties, but he always taught me how to save, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And he kind of gave me the foundation at a young age. Like, he gave me an example. He's like, if you mowed the lawn and you get $50, right? He's like, take half of that money. That's your spending money. That $25 goes to a stock account, right? So since like I was legally able to, I opened up a Roth IRA, right? My retirement account, and I religiously put money in it every single year.
Hmm.
So I was always like thinking, okay, like how do I save? How do I grow it? How do I grow money?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 all that stuff. And that kind of gave me the background. Now, in terms of like surrounding myself, like when I first started investing, I didn't know anybody. So I went to local real estate meetups. When you go to these local real estate meetups, like whatever city you're in, there's some sort of real estate network or event that's going on. You just got to look it up. There's apps like Meetup. You can Google them, Facebook Market, or Facebook them, whatever. There's thousands of groups. And when you go to these meetings, the only advice I can give you is have a plan,
Hmm.
right? Don't go to a networking event just to network. Like you need to have a plan. So like if you're going to get started in investing, maybe you want to meet agents, right? Real estate investor friendly agents, like have a plan. Like I'm going to go talk to every single agent in that meetup. When you start getting agents, that starts building. So the reason why I say investor agent, if they're an investor themselves, they have connections to contractors, they have connections to money lenders, and if they're an investor, they know how to analyze deals. So they can kind of coach you through the process, right? So like for me, my agent helped me out tremendously on my first deal. I just fumbled the ball at the 1 yard line, right? I just picked the wrong people to help me renovate. But she was there to tell me, I think the numbers work. And the numbers did work. The house appraised really high. It was just in a bad neighborhood, and you know, certain things like didn't really line up to sell it, but I could have renovated and just put a renter in there and would have cash flowed $500 a month. I just didn't want to keep a property in that area, right? So that agent's there to help you, guide you, teach you the ropes, and connect you with your first batch of contractors, right? So, you know, that's something to think about. That one person you met, or that I met, connected with me with like 10 different resources that helped me get my first deal.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then that same agent helped me find my duplex that I VA loaned into.
Oh, wow.
So, you know what I mean? Like, if you guys just think about it, that one person affected my life tremendously. Right.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. That's what real estate is all about. That's what business is all about.
Yeah.
Genuine connections. Right. I'm sorry. You can
go. No. Continue.
I think the second part too for me was I learned at a very young age was don't ask for free stuff all the time. Like, you know, if someone reaches out to you and it's like, hey, I see you're doing all this stuff. How can I learn? They just want to learn for free. Like when I first started, and we'll get to this too, like when I started doing creative finance, I actually worked for somebody for free.
Oh, wow.
I call people for free. Right? Because I wanted to learn how to do the game. So instead of me saying, can you teach me? I'm like, I'll work for you, man. I'll do something. Whatever you need, if I can do that, we're a good fit, right? Like not everybody's a good fit. So for that investor that I work for, I said, I can give you 1 hour to 2 hours a day after work, and I'll call people for you.
Oh, wow.
In exchange for you to mentor me, right? So there's a couple of different things you can do. You just have to be a little creative with it.
Yeah. And you mentioned creative financial strategies, you know, and I kind of wanted to lean into that and talk about that because as you may know, everyone has this problem when it comes to real estate, including me, and just investing in just in life in general. You know, whenever you're trying to purchase property, everyone's looking at the amount of money needed to do that. And it starts to feel unfeasible. Like, man, I don't have the down payment. I don't have $30,000 or whatever, $25,000 to invest in the property. And I don't have the capital. And, you know, and some people some people have salaries, unfortunately, that don't allow them to raise capitals at a fast enough rate to make the purchase. So for people like that who want to enter into real estate, but feel like they can't because of a lack of money, what are some creative financial strategies for them to go about purchasing a property?
Yeah, I think like to do the creative finance stuff, you need the education. If you don't have the money, you have two choices, right? You have the first choice, I think, is you network with somebody that knows how to do it, right? So like, for instance, like I get messages all the time like, hey, how do I like work with you, or how do I learn this stuff? And I'm like, well, it depends on what you can provide. Like, do you want to lend money on one of my deals and I will flip the house? I'll be the operator and I'll flip the house and I'll teach you the ropes while I'm using your money. And I'm also making you money too. The second way is, let's say like Ike, let's say you're a general contractor and you've renovated tons of houses and you're like, I want to get started in investing. I just know how to rebuild houses. Okay, well, what if I fund your deal? What if I am your partner and I back you financially? You flip the house, you do all this stuff, and we split the profits on how we decide.
Mm-hmm.
You not only get to see how my brain works, but we're also saving money because you're a contractor.
Yeah.
If you don't have the money, then I think the only thing you can provide is time, right? So like I
Yes.
have people that call me or call for me for my business. They cold call for me, and I teach them how to do it, and I pay them a commission. So everyone has a different business model. Everyone has a different value to provide in exchange for mentorship. Now, I'll be transparent. Like for me, like I paid for mentorship, right? So I paid for education. And you'll see that a lot of real estate investors or business people pay for education to accelerate their growth. Now, I don't say use money out of your pocket. I use my rental properties or my flips to fund my education. So I have that kind of like in my budget, right? So like if I make X amount of money this year, I will allocate this much money towards education this year, right? Because you always have to learn. You always got to learn different things, right? My last year stuff, I don't even do the stuff I do really last year anymore. I'm doing a whole different thing now, right? Your strategy changes and you need to get educated on it. But that's a whole different thing. If you don't have money, you learn how to either negotiate better, right? Learn the techniques of creative finance, and then you eventually learn how to negotiate it. So the more you know in your brain, the more confident you are while you negotiate, and you can get better deals. Most of the time, you're not going to get zero down and stuff like that, but you can raise capital, right? So like, okay, I think it's a mindset thing where people say, well, I don't have $20,000, $30,000 to buy this property. If you structure a deal where even if you borrow that $20,000 from somebody and you still cash flow, you have the money, it's there. Right. But like people say like, oh, I don't have the money to do it. Well, why don't you rewire in and think, instead of saying I can't, or I don't have the money, how can I find the money? Right. And the great like debate of, did the chicken come before the egg? You don't need the money to buy the deal. You need to get a really good deal. And I guarantee you the money's going to come. Right. Like you don't need to be a great salesman to sell a brand new Rolls Royce. You need to be a good salesman to sell a 1995 Corolla.
Yeah.
Right. So if you get a banging deal, and so investors, right? Let's say for me, you ask me for money to buy a house. If you show me that the numbers are really, really good, and you don't pay me back, I'm gonna foreclose you and take that property. Right. So that's the incentive for us. Is like, if you don't perform on the private money loan or the loan that I lend you, I get that property. That's why it's like, if you get a great deal, the money's going to come. Someone's going to lend. Right.
So that's the question. And I want to focus on great deals. You know, I have two questions for you that everyone is definitely thinking of, and including myself. When we're talking about great deals, one, how do you know that you have a great deal? And then two, how do you go about finding the great deals? Because in my personal experience, I feel like one of the hardest things about real estate is actually finding the deal that's worth getting. Because I feel like since it's such a great deal, you know, everyone is competing for that great deal. So how do you go about finding the deal, and how do you know that you have a great deal worth investing in?
Absolutely. I think for me, every investor has a different criteria, right? I think for me personally, it's a little different than someone that has 100 properties, right? Some people that are making tons of money don't really care about the spread. Sometimes they buy a house for equity. But for me, I need cash flow. So for me, where can I get the highest cash on cash return, right? Because if money is limited, how do I maximize that dollar? So number one goal is to pay as least amount down as possible. So that's why I don't buy conventional houses anymore, because usually it takes 20 to 25% down to buy.
So what are conventional houses again, for people who may not know?
So conventional loans, or buying houses conventional, is when you go to the bank and you put 20% down, and then they finance, right? They finance the loan for 30 years. That's conventional. Sure. So that's a lot of capital. You can only do like one or two every couple of years at the best, right?
Sure.
So the goal is to reduce the down payment, the entry fee, and then what's the cash on cash return on the amount of money you put down, right? So if I get someone that says, hey, if you give me 10% down or less, and we do seller finance, and I pay them over time, over a course of set up amount of years, and I'm cash flowing, 20% cash on cash return. Now we have a deal. For me personally, I want anything above 15% because it's not worth it to me to be a property manager or to deal with all the craziness of being a tenant or having tenants and repairs if I'm not getting a significant return higher than the stock market. Right. So I think the stock market on average in the last 50 years was like 7 to 10% per year. So if I'm not getting above 15%, like I would rather just throw that money in the stock market. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like my criteria of what makes a good deal.
Okay. And then for finding a good deal, how do people go about doing that? Actually finding the deal.
Man, yeah. I think there's two big ways is one's on the market and one's off the market. So you can still find good deals on the market. If you have a couple of good agents that are constantly looking for deals for you, especially in this market, like with the higher interest rates, there's some houses that sit on the market for a while. So if you're going to be a cash buyer and you're going to try to do the BRRRR method or flip it, maybe you can get houses on the discount, right? Because it's been on the market for so long. If you go on Zillow and you set your standards for any house above 90 days on the market, those are people that I usually would call. Like those are the first houses I would call because it's been on the market for over 3 months. So those sellers have some experience paying. Maybe they're in a rush to sell it. No one wants to buy it. So those are good opportunities to either buy it for a lower price with a loan, or you do seller finance or creative finance, right? Like when I would call them and say, hey, is your seller, you call the agent and you're like, hey, is your seller interested in, would it be a waste of time if I offered lower than asking? And they're like, yes, like they need the money for whatever reason. Are they open to a creative offer? And if they say yes, hey, now you're in the money, right? So now you can say, well, you're asking for $200,000. That $200,000 is not a problem for me. I'll offer you that $200,000 if you're allowing me to pay you over time, right? And that's how you start negotiating that creative deal. Deal with wholesalers. Connect with every single wholesaler in your market. They're the ones doing the dirty work. They're the ones calling hundreds and hundreds of sellers every single day, and you pay them for their work. Right. That's what it's all about. So at the end of the day, like I said, it's networking because you're going to network with wholesalers, you're going to network with agents, and let them help you find deals. You don't have to do it yourself. I
love that. So help utilize other people and their connections to help you. And you'll be amazed if one of my quotes that I'm constantly learning is closed mouths don't get fed. And if you simply just ask, there's so many people who are willing to help, but sometimes it's the hardest thing to do is actually initiate that and just simply ask the real estate agent or the investor or the contractor, hey, do you know anybody who may be selling a house, or do you know anybody who is interested in raising capital together? You never know where you get. I simply was able to speak to you by simply asking you, hey, would you be interested in doing this podcast? And you'll be amazed the type of people who are willing to help you. But you gotta ask first, right?
Yeah, if you're willing to put the ego aside, you don't like the sky's the limit, right? I ask people questions all the time. I mean, like yesterday, I was on Zooms all day too, just like connecting with other investors doing really cool things that I'm interested in. And, you're in the real estate world and investing world, like you will learn something new every single day. You're never going to be an expert.
Yeah.
Right? Like just have that growth mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. So, dude, Tim, one of the things you mentioned is that because I personally have this problem of only being limited to buying a property 1 or every 2 years because of that 20%, 25% down payment. How do you go about finding other options where you don't have to use such a high down payment? Like, what are other options to do that?
Instead of using the bank?
Yeah, instead of using the bank, because you mentioned that, you're limited by the 20 to 25% down payment. How can people use a different like option? Like, like you mentioned seller financing. What are those strategies? Can you talk more about those in detail?
Yeah, so I want people to know that there are bank products out there. If you plan to live in a house, you can use the FHA loan, right? That's 3.5% down. So if
Okay.
you plan to live in a home and this is like your first time buying a house, whatever, like why not use the 3.5% down loan, right? And then when you move out, you can rent it and then, you get a house for almost cheap for free. The second option is like Fannie Mae has the 5% conventional loan for all residential multifamilies. So you can house hack without being a veteran for 5% down and you rent out the other houses. So
Really?
yeah, there's loan products out there. You just have to make sure your numbers work. That's on the banking side. Now, if you go creative finance, that takes a little more skill because you need to know how to do it. You need the paperwork and you also need to know how to negotiate it. But seller finance is literally the seller becomes the bank, right? So if the house is paid off and you go buy it from me, so I'm the seller and you buy it for 100,000 and you give me 10% down. So you owe me 90 grand, right? So we create a mortgage. So the seller makes a mortgage on the property and you pay me over time. We set the rates, we set the years, we set the payments, whatever we negotiate, we don't need the bank. This is off the bank's record. We're just doing a deal between us. That's seller finance, right? Literally sounds just like that. The seller is financing you the house. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
The second way is a little more riskier and a little more complicated. I don't recommend it. Is when you take over people's debts. Like I would do that if I'm more experienced. Like, I do subject to. So the deal is called subject to when you take over existing people's mortgages and their debt. It sounds just like that. Like if I have a house and I borrowed a 30-year mortgage at 5% interest and you buy it subject to, you are literally taking over my mortgage. You're not assuming it. You're just taking over. So the debt that I borrowed is still under my name. So it's risky because if you don't pay the mortgage, it affects me negatively, right? Because I have the debt.
Yeah.
But there's certain motivators of why someone would do that. Like if I was going to a pre-foreclosure and I was going to lose the house anyway, and my credit score would get destroyed if I got foreclosed on, why don't you catch up the mortgage and I just give you my house?
Yeah.
Right. So now my credit score improves over the 30 years that you've paid that mortgage. I don't go through a foreclosure. You give me some money on top because in foreclosure, I lose it all with no money. So what if you offered, like I had a buddy offer, he caught up the mortgage for $15,000. He paid the $15,000. He gave the seller $5,000 on top. And then he took over the person's mortgage and it was like 3.8% interest. Right? In today's market. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
So those are just some of the options that you can learn to help you get houses for cheaper or better terms that will cash flow in today's market.
Awesome. Yeah. I appreciate all the value that you're providing and the education that you're providing. I was very curious about you because I heard about the FHA loan, that 3.5%, and I actually used it for one of my properties. I think it was the first property that I brought in nearby Philadelphia. I'm not familiar with the 5% multifamily loan product that you're talking about. Is that available nationally? I've never heard about that. I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, it came out in November, so it's actually
of this year.
Yeah, of 2023.
Oh, of 2023. Okay.
It's sponsored by Fannie Mae, so it's a government-backed loan.
Wow!
Allowing you to purchase multifamily deals with 5% down.
That's dope. I didn't even know that. Yeah. Okay, that's dope, man. I'm definitely gonna have to look into that in the future, and then definitely seller financing, man. So, dude, I think, dude, there's so much value being told. I mean, I have so much more questions to ask you. Why, with in regards to just overall, like, you went from being in the military and now you're just investing consistently in real estate, which is awesome. Can you speak to the shift in your identity and just how you feel like you have grown and changed as a man ever since you started focusing on real estate. What are some of the things you've noticed about yourself that has changed drastically?
I think like the ability to my time management skills have gotten better, right? Like there's only so many hours in the day that you can do certain things. So you really have to start being organized to kind of, do all this stuff. Cause I still have a W-2, like I work full time and all this stuff. So you have to balance everything out. But I think the biggest thing is the way I think about things, right? I now know what's out there. I now know what's possible, right? And I think that is what keeps me going. Like I used to and I know a lot of people out there kind of feel the same way. And it's not a good feeling to wake up and hate going to work.
Yes.
I love what I did, and I loved my job and I loved the military, and I won't trade it for anything. It's taught me so much, but it's the rat race. It's the rat race that we talk about. I wake up every day. I used to wake up every day at like 8:30, right? Or 8 o'clock. And then I would drive to work and get to work by 9, sluggish. I grind 9 to 5 and drive home and all this stuff.
No,
I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. I wake up at 5 a.m. I work out every single morning. By the time it's like 8 o'clock, dude, like I've done all the BS stuff that I need to do throughout the day. Like in terms of like my fitness, like I don't really listen to podcasts anymore and stuff, but I do all my reading and stuff in the morning.
Yeah.
And then 9 to 5, I'm working. I do my full-time job, 9 to 5, and then I can do real estate for a couple hours, and I fit real estate in between my 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And then hang out with my wife and go to bed, dude. Like I wake up earlier than I did before. I feel way more energized because the time I spend is the stuff that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is like what the biggest thing is about. And in a couple of years, I have a plan. So 2 years, I'll be out of the Army fully. And I'm going to do this full time, right? Because I know this is what I want to do. And it's like we said in the past, right, what your long-term goals are. This is what I have to do to achieve that long-term goal. To be able to affect 1,000 veteran lives. Right? Better. Yeah. So, dude, I mean, you could tell me I'm energized, bro. Like,
dude. Yeah. You, every time I'm talking to you about this, you just get so passionate. You're so sincere about it. And that's what this podcast is all about. I love talking to people where they talk about what they're passionate about, why they're passionate about it, and how they're using their goals and their passions to serve other people. I think in your case, your goal is very targeted to military people, and I think that's so awesome. I think it's so needed, and I feel like I like how you're really creating a disciplined lifestyle for yourself. I read a quote that they said, "Discipline equals freedom." And, it sounds counterintuitive because sometimes when people think about discipline, it seems so strict and rigid. But I think sometimes the more disciplined you are, the more it gives you the freedom to really have more control over your life, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm not rushing during the day like, oh, my God, I got to go to the gym at 5 p.m. Like, it's already done.
Yeah.
It's already done.
Yeah, right? Yeah, man.
So, but yeah, man.
Yeah. So you also, man, I also want to just congratulate you on your marriage because I know you recently got married, and I also just kind of wanted to speak about that and just talk about how your relationship also helped you become the man you are, and how she helps you with just what are your goals and whatnot, because I'm sure that's part of marriage and being in line. How has that played a role in who you are today?
Oh man, I mean, I appreciate it. First off, we just got married in November of 2023, so pretty recent.
Congratulations!
Marriage. Yeah, thank you, brother. I've known her for over 3 years, but she brings balance, right? In terms of when I was kind of by myself, like I didn't really care what I was doing. I was like, I'll just keep moving around, keep doing my job. But now it's like I have a family. So I think a lot of it is, it's not just for myself. So also my risk taking is a lot less now too. But she brings a more like empathetic view on life. So I'm very like a numbers based guy. Like I'm very, okay, like what am I getting from this? What am I getting from that? She's like, well, maybe you should think more of like, just be more empathetic to people. Right. And
more human.
more human, right? Because like,
Yeah.
you can lose yourself in this.
Yes.
And
Yes.
before I recently got on this new thing of like waking up early and stuff, like even with real estate, I was run down, right? Because
Yeah.
I was trying to do too much, doing everything myself,
Yeah.
and I'm taking a step back, right? So now I set like a day. So I think Wednesdays now is like my complete day off during the week.
Wow.
Yeah, I just go to work, don't do real estate. I'm like,
Wow.
I don't take calls. I don't do anything unless like a seller calls me on a Wednesday. I'll take
Yeah,
it.
you gotta get to
But
that back.
gotta chase the money, right? But
Yeah.
in general, if I can
Yeah.
control it, it's like usually the day where I, do my chores. Like tomorrow, I gotta drop off my car and get a haircut. Like it's more of like my personal day.
Yeah.
And then I try not to do anything on Sundays. So Sundays is family time. Do whatever you want. Like, if you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh cards or Pokemon cards, go play Pokemon, right? Like I'm not telling you to give up your hobbies, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be a balance. Like you can't work and run yourself to the ground and you'll quit, right? It's kind of like being on a diet. Like I found myself just burnt out, right? So I block off 2 days a week where I don't worry about real estate. Sundays, obviously, I'm off from work too. So it's just a day where I can just get my thoughts together, write out my content for social media because I have some peace.
Okay.
Right. And then boom, you go into your next week. You get prepped and you grind for, those couple of days.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely love everything you said right now because I feel like sometimes it can get so easy to lose yourself just constantly chasing money, constantly chasing that business. Sometimes even that, like sometimes you get out of the 9 to 5 to be free, but then you can kind of enter into another new 9 to 5, in a weird way where you can get burnt out in a way. So I think it's great that you mentioned to be balanced, and I love that you give your wife credit for doing that because I believe a good woman will really bring the best out of you. And it sounds like your wife is doing that. I'm just curious. You said you have family. Do you have kids as well, Tim?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Wow.
We don't got little ones running around, but
Yeah.
I just meant like kind of like
No, she's his
as a
family.
whole.
It's still
Yeah,
family.
as
Yeah.
a whole. You know what I mean? Like now we're kind of a unit, but I think the biggest thing is you have to fit it in a schedule too to hang out with your family. Like,
For sure.
Like, this sounds weird, right? Oh, you got to schedule hanging out with your family. No, I mean like, because it's like you said, like when you're in the grind, you're in the grind. So,
Yeah.
We recently was like, hey, every Friday we will go do something together, right? Like no matter what, we got to clear the schedule. We got to do it. And even if we're tired or whatever, like we don't have to go out. We don't have to go out to dinner, but like, let's watch a movie at home or let's do this. Like we have to block out that time to spend that time together because she works a full-time job as well. She's doing all this stuff as well. Like we need to make sure that we have time together, right?
Yeah.
To have that part of the relationship healthy. Like you can have super successful business, terrible family life.
Yeah.
And then you're unhappy, right?
Yeah.
So stuff like that.
And I love what you said, man, because, one of the things is, I feel like a good woman gives you like purpose in your life, and I think that it's just so incredible. Like I think it's so incredibly underrated. I feel like one of the biggest problems of today's generation is a lot of us we lack purpose and we don't feel like we have a reason to do anything. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like when you have a woman by your side, you feel like as a man you have to protect her, you have to provide for her, and you don't want to let her down. So I'm gonna be the best man I can possibly be for not only for myself but for her. And I'm sure once you have kids, I don't have any kids too. I'm sure that gives you even more purpose to chase your goals and to succeed, because now it's not just about you. It's about all the other people who are looking upon you. And I feel like men today, we need more purpose in our life. We need more reasons to go about living and not just kind of mindlessly working a 9 to 5 just because that's what we're supposed to do or that's what school wants us to do, but really living intentionally.
I think well, you're spot on, right? So in terms of, I had this thought in my mind, but basically, like, if you look yourself in the mirror and you're not taking care of yourself, right? Like in terms of mentally, physically, whatever, like how can you provide for other people?
Yes.
Right. And it's like any entrepreneur would tell you, or any business owner, it's like, okay, so yes, you get paid for the services you provide in terms of your business. But with that money you get, what are you going to do with that money? Right. Because you can make a ton of money, millions of dollars, and have no drive or purpose to do something bigger. It's not going to mean anything to you.
Yes.
To a certain point, right? And that's why you see all these people, like, they kind of go crazy when they like have all this money because they don't know what to do with it. But I think, like, if you have that purpose, you're more motivated to keep driving on to whatever you have to do. Like, I have to call after this. I have to call sellers, right? And like, I really don't want to, but I got to do it, right? It's my business model, so I got to do it.
Yeah.
And that's just something to think about as you guys move forward.
Yeah. I also think it creates a system that allows you to be more sustainable, which will ultimately benefit your business because you can do it more consistently for a longer period of time instead of trying to rush everything and try to do everything in like a year or so. Right. You can look at it from a longer vision that makes it more sustainable for you to be consistent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, man, dude, with all this great real estate advice that you're providing, man, people want to, if for people who are looking for resources to get started, or they never bought their own property, or they're considering buying their property, their first property, like, what are some resources that people can use to jumpstart their and begin their journey, their real estate journey?
Yeah, there are tons of good podcasts out there. I would, if you're a beginner, maybe not listen to the Bigger Pockets, maybe listen to the Bigger Pockets Rookie. That's a good resource. I mean, that's how I started. And then, I got on YouTube. I watched people like Pace Morby on YouTube. He's the creative finance guy. He's the guy I paid for my mentorship. So I learned from him on how to do creative finance. And there's just also other stuff out there. But the most important thing that there's too much stuff out there.
Yeah.
Right. So the biggest thing if you're getting started is pick your market that you want to invest in. And you can watch videos on how to pick a market. And then 2, pick your strategy, right? Because once you figure out those 2 big things, your market and your strategy, the third step is to network, right? Because now you can network because you know what you want to do. So once you figure out that plan, now you're like, how do I pick the people to achieve that goal? So let's say I want to go to Chattanooga, Tennessee. I want to do fix and flips. Okay, great. I'm going to get on Facebook, right? So I'm going to give you guys some actionable steps. Chattanooga, Tennessee, I'm going to go flip houses. I'm going to go on Facebook Marketplace, or I'm going to go Facebook. I'm going to look at Tennessee real estate groups, right? Tennessee, whatever, because we're going to do a virtual because I know people are scared to do virtual investing.
Yeah.
Go to these virtual groups, these big meetups, and then you can pay for the national state one. So every state has a national real estate association. Pay the $100 a year, join, get into virtual meetings, get on the Facebook groups and say, I'm looking for a real estate investor friendly agent. Send the message. You're going to get 60,000 people hit you up. I guarantee it, because agents are all over the place.
Yeah.
And then you interview every single agent. Do not pick the first one off the street. You ask them, what type of investor are you? If you want to do fix and flips, you're looking for an agent that's done fix and flips, right? Don't hire the person that's never done the thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
Hire the people that have done the thing, right?
Yes.
So then we go back to the beginning of this podcast. I said, what does agents provide you? Information, contractors, money, resources, whatever you need to get you through. If you hire a random agent that just got their license last week, you're out of luck. You picked the wrong agent. I'm sorry to tell you. And you don't pay the commissions for a buyer's agent. So it's completely for free for you. So that's what I would do first. And then go on and set forth, right?
Yeah. And right now, I'm curious to learn about your market in particular. You use Chattanooga, Tennessee as like a some hypothetical situation, but right now you're actually in Louisville, Kentucky. Can you speak to the advantages of your particular local market and why it is good for you?
Affordability, right? Houses that you buy for rentals aren't super expensive.
Okay.
I mean, there are some like my duplex was like $300,000, and that's expensive for here.
Really?
But yeah, but you have a more of a renter market. Like there's a lot of jobs like UPS, Amazon warehouses, the Fed, or I think it's the UPS like flying, like the hangar, like it's like a giant distribution center. So tons of UPS workers are here, and they're working class, right? So you buy working class properties where, I hate to say it, like it's a renter market. Like they're not going to buy a house; they're just going to rent.
Yeah.
Kentucky is trying to grow, so Louisville in general is growing. So I look for markets that are growing, not shrinking, because that's not good. And then you look for big news, like is Louisville or Kentucky in general doing things to incentivize businesses to come here? So Kentucky is trying to knock down the income tax down to zero in the next 10 years. So they're actually implementing the plan, like every couple of years they'll lower the income tax. So when you lower the income tax, businesses are more incentivized to come here. So if another Fortune 500 company comes, that's 10,000 more people that need a place to live. That's a good problem to have if you have rentals.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of pick mine. And also I live here, so I understand the market a lot better, right?
Yeah, dude. It's so much better when you're actually there because you can do the groundwork if needed. Do you also do virtual investing sometimes? Like where you invest in places outside of your city, or you just stick to where you are and what you know?
Only with partnerships, I'll go outside. So we flipped a house in Jacksonville, Florida. I lent money on a deal in Oklahoma where my partner bought it sub 2. So, I mean, there's so many ways to get, involved in investing. If you have the right people, like the network, like I said, then you can do certain things. So like for me, I don't invest outside of my city unless I know somebody out there. So that's kind of how I do it.
That's fair. Yeah, dude, that's fair. I only invest. I'm a big fan of just investing where you are. I know everyone does things differently, but for me, it's helpful to, like, if you have a situation or a problem to be fixed, dude, it's so much easier to manage a property when you're actually there. But then maybe sometimes it also helps to get a property manager. Do you have a property management team as well, Tim, or do you?
I do everything. I do everything by software right now.
Okay.
I will hire somebody to kind of just check up on stuff when I leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything's paid. Everything's done digitally. Like I market digitally. I get rents digitally. The only time I see the tenant is when I come move them in.
Yeah.
So, and then I never tell them I'm the owner, by the way. Don't do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell me you're the property manager, but you move them in and then you move them out. Done. Right?
So you'd be like, yo, what's up, bro? I'm the property manager.
That's it. I don't make any decisions. I'm just here to give you I'm just here to give you the keys. Yeah, I'm here to give you the keys, and you can call me when there's a problem. So like, I don't take calls from tenants. Like I let them leave a message, right? So like if they text me or leave me a message, then I'll get to it when I get to it. If they call me and leave a message and say the toilet is exploding, then yeah, I'll call them and be like, okay, like I'm getting a guy right now. But if you take every call from tenants, they're gonna get habitualized. Yeah, they'll be like, oh, I can just keep calling them. No, you're gonna call me. I'm gonna put you on the answering machine, and it's gonna say like, oh, like my kitchen light's out. Well, okay, I'll text them back saying like I'll send someone in the next couple of days.
Yeah,
like I'm not gonna like flip over and do it right now, right?
Yeah. So what has your overall experience as a landlord been like? Because when I first became a landlord, I was like 24 years old. And the weirdest thing about being a landlord, at least where I was in my market, is I'm like 23, 24-year-old. I have a baby face. And I have tenants who are literally like triple my age. And I'm like, bro, like you gotta like pay me and like you're trying to set boundaries, but like there's like a power dynamic, but you don't want to be so rude that you lose respect. It's like a fine line of treating people with respect, but also enforcing boundaries. What has your experience being a landlord been like too? Because you're pretty young as well.
Yeah, like I said, like I'm the property manager.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'll just be like, hey, you're yelling at me. I don't really care. Like I'm not here to like, whatever. I'm just going to call the landlord and tell him you're being rude.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like that's simple as that. And they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, hey, I might be a no one, but I know the landlord. So I'll give him a call.
Yeah.
Right. And then also, I only had like one bad tenant, but she left.
Okay.
And then we we got a new tenant in there recently, and we raised the rents because she was an inherited tenant. I bought the house and she was there. She eventually moved out and all this stuff, and then we raised the rents to the actual market rent.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, for me, like, it's very virtual. Like, you just be nice, like, just be a normal person. Like, hey, how's it going? And also, you can prevent all that if you screen the right tenant in the first place.
Yes.
So you can avoid all that stuff if you know how to, like,
So
screen tenants.
let me follow up with that. How many rentals do you have, and how do you go about screening tenants?
Yeah, so I got 9 buy and holds right now.
Cool.
And use the software that I use, right? So I use avail.com, and then I've tried other ones like Anago. They're all free. You can list your property on there. Like, you upload the pictures, it blasts it out to like 10 different websites, and then you'll get inquiries as you go. And then you send them a pre-screen checklist, right? That's important. They fill out the pre-screen. If they are good, then you send them the application. Every state's different, by the way. So, like, for us, if you send them an application, you have to give them a chance. But you can send them pre-screening to be like, hey, you don't qualify for the pre-screening, so I'm not going to send you an application, right? So there's ways around it. Now, the apps are way easy. Like, if they do the pre-screen, looks good, they're emailing coherently, right? I don't like, if I get an email that's crazy, like, I'm like, okay, maybe that's not the right tenant. But you do the background check, the credit score check right on the website. They pay directly to the website. You get the report back. You look at it. Everything's all hunky-dory. You send them the lease through the system, and then they can sign it on the system, and then you're good. They can pay you. They can pay you rent virtually too. So it's very hands-off for me. I used to be more on the nicer side, like, like, if you communicate with me and, like, if you're late on the rent, that's fine. I just need you to pay it by a certain day because I got to pay my mortgages. But
For sure.
If it's more continuous, then I'll start tacking the late fee. Like, you start to become, like, more, like, I hate to say it, like, more, like, heartless, but it's a business, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't pay rent, like, you can't live here.
Yeah.
Like, if we like gave rent for free, we'd be bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a balance with everything. It's hard to say. It's not.
It's a balance.
Yeah, it's not like a hard, like, science. It's more of like art.
People skills.
Yeah, you got to be able to read people and
People skills. Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand stuff happens, and you tell me, like, oh my gosh, like, I get it. You can send me the rent later.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you're continuously late, like, you just have to have that conversation. Like, hey, I can't be. Like, you can't send the rent 16 days late every month.
Yeah.
It's going to get to a point where I'm going to tack a late fee, and then eventually, like, we're going to have to move forward with evicting you.
Yeah. Has it ever had to come to that point with any of your experiences?
Not my tenants, but I had to evict someone that I bought a house from. So I bought a house from an owner. She had a tenant in there, and she moved out, but her son refused to move out. So I had to evict the son.
Wow.
And then I had to renovate the house, because I was flipping it. So yeah, it sucks, but
But it's part of the business.
It's part of the game.
Well, I like your reaction to it, and I like how you seem like you're one of the a little bit more cold-hearted, but, like, you're sticking to your principles and just getting the job done, which I think is necessary to enforce discipline and rules. So, in regards to like your real estate transactions and whatnot, I guess my follow-up question is, when you're going about purchasing all your real estate, when you go about purchasing all your real estate, Tim, what do you need to do in order to just make sure that like, all your finances are accounted for, and you're not, like, in the rabbit hole of debt? Because one of the things about real estate is, you end up taking a lot of debt. So how do you take that debt and manage it?
Are you talking about, like, how do I not over leverage myself?
Yeah, essentially.
You gotta look yourself in the mirror, man. I mean,
yeah.
Like, are you okay? Simple math equation: your expenses, your revenue.
Yeah.
Are you making more money than your debt? And are you making enough money to justify you borrowing the money?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's what it comes down to. Is it risky debt? Is it like, are you borrowing 14, 15% loans and you can't pay it? Or do you have 4% fixed interest rate, 30-year loan?
hmm
Right?
yeah,
It's just, you have to look at your books like, hey, am I making money on this deal? If I'm
yeah,
not making money on this deal, how can I make money on this deal?
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you're not making money on the deal, maybe you shouldn't go buy another house.
yeah, 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 dude.
Right?
Yeah,
I think I like to keep things simple. I'm not a smart man. So
yeah,
we want to keep things simple. Am I
hmm
making money?
yeah,
Yes. Am I making enough money on this deal? Yes.
yeah,
Okay, then let's go try to buy another house.
yeah, yeah.
Right? Stabilize your asset, then go to another one.
Yeah, yeah, Tim. Yeah, bro, I appreciate all the knowledge that you have been able to provide on this podcast. Honestly, it's a pleasure to just network with you and talk with you. It's kind of like what you said about the importance of surrounding yourself with people you want to be like. And honestly, surrounding yourself around you and just having conversations about real estate, it always makes me think about, yo, how can I continue to be a better real estate investor and acquire more properties? So I'm simply thankful for just you coming into my life and inspiring me to stay consistent in my journey in being a real estate investor and helping me learn how to better navigate the market. And before we end the podcast, Tim, if people want to get to know more about you or learn other strategies or simply just reach out to you, what are some ways they can do that?
Yeah, man. Of course. First off, thank you for bringing me on, dude. Love chatting with you. As you can see, I love talking about real estate.
Yeah.
It's what I love to do. But y'all can find me on Instagram. I have it under my name down here. It's Tim Yu, right? So my name, real easy. I post a lot of stuff about creative finance on my Instagram. So if you guys are interested in learning stuff like that and how to buy houses with little to no money, that's what I post about on my Instagram. So I love to connect with you guys. Send me a DM. Would love to chat.
Yeah, yeah. And Tim, thank you again for coming on this podcast. Yeah, I really appreciate you and all the time that you shared. And we'll stay in touch for sure, man.
Yeah, brother. Of course. Hit me up anytime.
All right, boss.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Take it easy.